See, on the left, we have the Gurus. They are 2-2 today. 0-2 on camera, 2-0 off camera. We'll see if they can break that streak. Against the team of Jeff Stevens, Nicholas Byrd, and Zach Allen. Remember Nicholas Byrd, he is an open winner this season with Ad Nauseam. And players trading lands to start the game. The thing that sticks out to me when I look at these matchups is we start at the top here. The Ben Friedman, Jeff Stevens matchup in Legacy. That's a terrible matchup for the metagame Gurus. Blue-black control is this slow, grinding control deck against lands.
Yep, that's not where they want to be. Davis has beaten Ad Nauseam earlier in this tournament, but it's not really the best matchup.
So trading of lands on both sides here between Zach Allen and Frank Skarren. No one wanting to play anything here as we go to the 4th turn. And I have to think if the players just continue to trade land drops without any action, that I would think favors Zach's deck.
It kind of depends on how many counters Frank is sitting on. If he has multiple spell quellers, some other counter he's able to convert. When Allen starts forcing the action, that can be really bad for him. But Skarren's deck very much needs to get on the table in a relevant way. Allen's deck does more with the individual spells.
Yeah, Allen, I mean, you see Allen already shuffling to the front of his hand a Glimmer of Genius for the end step. Frank blinks the first threat in Selfless Spirit. He leaves up 2. Now, as far as counter spells, in the main, Frank has 2 Metallic Rebukes and 3 copies of Censor. So he'll tap for a pair of 2-drops. It's Glorybound Initiate and Selfless Spirit.
And these are 2 creatures that would make it so Allen can't use Sweeper, say Sweltering Suns, to clean up from here.
Zach will play Glimmer of Genius.
Only 1 Sweltering Suns in Allen's main deck. But he can certainly use 2 removal spells to clean this up.
Yeah, much like these blue-red control decks that have become popular this weekend, he is a 4 Magma Spray, 4 Harnessed Lightning deck.
1 copy of Incendiary Flow in the main as well. Plenty of creatures worth exiling in this standard format.
Yeah, and we were mentioning one of the ways to try to beat Marvel and zombies at the same time would be, you know, Magma Sprays, Harnessed Lightnings, and Blue Gear Hulks.
Yep. Dynavolt Tower, certainly a card that I am personally rather fond of. It has taken a couple downticks in playability with the printing of Dissenter's Deliverance and Manglehorn, though neither of those are going to be in Skarren's deck. It's more true that destroying the Dynavolt Tower matters than, say, an Aetherworks Marvel.
So go to Zach Allen. This is his turn 5. It's the first time that Frank has presented any threats. We'll see how Zach wants to deal with them. While Frank is tapped down, and I like this play, Zach is going to cast Dynavolt Tower, cast Attune with the Aether, getting 2 energy from the spell and 2 from the tower, so it moves up to 6. On the surface, Frank might have thought that Zach was a Marvel deck. Certainly with those colors and the kind of gameplay that had happened, that would be reasonable. But landing Dynavolt Tower is a big win for Zach Allen. Frank's deck doesn't have many ways to get rid of the tower once it's actually in play.
Yeah, in the main deck, he's just kind of at the mercy of the tower. From the sideboard, he has 1 cast out.
Yeah, so main phase, the tower will shoot down Selfless Spirit, leaving Zach with 1 energy. Glorybound Initiate will attack. We'll see if it's with or without Exert. And actually, before he gets the chance, it's Magma Spray from Zach Allen. Though by doing this in main phase instead of upkeep, Frank actually has an opportunity to cast Archangel Avacyn. He won't. It'll be Spell Queller. Zach still, however, gets energy off Dynavolt Tower.
And Zach still is at 20. It's possible he's just trying to get Skarren to play these cards out of his hand so that he has more information and he can start killing those creatures.
Glorybound Initiate attacks from Frank. Because there's no blockers, there's no real need to exert here. It's a 3-1 when unexerted. So 6 damage over 2 turns is better than 4 over 1 from Frank's side.
Right. It looks like he has found his 1 copy of Sweltering Suns. And the Spell Queller on the battlefield, that's just a clean sweep. He wouldn't get any value out of getting the Magma Spray back.
Right. Maybe even just a single targeted removal would work here. One game already done, and it's not a surprise. Jeff Stevens over on the legacy table with lands, he's able to take the first game off Ben Friedman.
The only surprise is that it happened that fast. Likely a merit lage involved.
So from Zach Allen, we're going to see that one of Incendiary Flow. It'll trigger Dynavolt Tower, then Magma Spray will happen, and it'll hit Glorybound Initiate. And then when the spell comes back from Spell Queller, the player actually gets to cast it an additional time. So that's more energy for the Dynavolt Tower.
And this is a spot, with the tower in play with that much energy. Even Gideons out of Skarren's deck are not particularly scary for Allen.
Right, and Allen's... Right, he's leaving it up because if Frank plays Gideon, you can end step shoot Gideon, untap shoot Gideon, especially if you have 10 energy to do it.
Yep. Dynavolt Tower, sort of like a Planeswalker, in that it generates a lot of value over turns.
Frank passes. Will Zach go for that end step Gear Hulk? It could get censored here. He's going to try for it. And there we go.
Yikes.
There's the Force Spike. Big win by Frank.
That was a very aggressive Gear Hulk as well.
It really wasn't respecting censor. There wasn't a need for Zach to make one yet.
Mm-hmm.
It may not have been on his radar.
Yeah.
So Zach will just pass. But with a Dynavolt on 8 energy, this still is a fine spot for Zach Allen.
Mm-hmm.
And Frank will pass the turn. Now Zach will try for a Glimmer of Genius. He has Metallic Rebuke mana up as well. So Frank just has to let that resolve. Zach will go to 12 energy and get 2 more cards. And it's looking, despite that Gear Hulk misstep, Zach was ahead by enough that this should be fine for him.
Yeah, it's certainly resolving that Glimmer of Genius from that spot.
Yeah, continues to develop Attune with Aether. Up to 16 energy. Has drawn Disallow off that Glimmer.
Mm-hmm. It's still true that Allen would like to assemble a Gear Hulk or a second Dynavolt Tower. He has a lot of energy, but it's only 3 Lightning Bolts worth. Skarren is at 24. It's going to take some time to close with just a Dynavolt Tower on its own. Got to make sure that he's at least able to cast more spells to charge the tower. So he's sitting on some number of counters, at least a Disallow in his hand.
Yeah, plays the 9th land. He'll just continue to trade lands back. Because Zach Allen is the Glimmer of Genius deck, with a Dynavolt Tower in play, there's no pressure on him to make a move.
Right. And Allen still has that Sweltering Suns. He has declined to cycle it. He's saving that in case Skarren's plan involves committing multiple creatures on the same turn.
So we have an Archangel Avacyn from Skarren. Zach Allen is going to Void Shatter it. Interesting mix of counterspells. It looks like 3 Void Shatter, 2 Disallow is the composition that Zach Allen went for.
There's some spells that exiling is pretty strong for. If you get into late game with zombies, sometimes you want to exile some of their creatures.
I do love 2 copies of Pull from Tomorrow in Zach Allen's deck too. We're already at that point in the game where 1 Pull from Tomorrow would be a monster play.
Absolutely.
But even then there's no need. Zach Allen continues with his 3rd Glimmer of Genius of the game. He brings up to 22 energy. And the Dynavolt Tower eventually becomes the win condition here.
If enough time passes and Skarren doesn't force you to commit too much action, you just have all these draw spells.
Yeah, Zach's hand has turned into multiple copies of Disallow, and a blue Gear Hulk. Looks like he'll go for another Dynavolt Tower to up his energy production.
And able to leave up 6 mana in doing that as well.
Yeah, blew up 2 Disallows as he plays a second tower. And Frank passes on end step. Zach will shoot him for 6.
Leaving over more than enough energy to activate both towers again. Not to mention, once you have 2 towers, all your spells are now 80% of Lightning Bolt instead of 40.
Over in Modern, it's the ad nauseum specialist Nicholas Byrd playing his deck. He gets it done. Takes game 1 over Jim Davis. Frank passes. Looks like Torrential Gear Hulk on end step. Probably just getting back, yeah. Glimmer of Genius. We need a correction on life totals. Frank Skarren's at 14 life here. Looks like Stasis Snare will take care of the Gear Hook, but Glimmer of Genius still happens, which nets 6 energy for Zach Allen, 2 off each tower, and then 2 off the spell.
Yeah, the Snare buys some time, but those towers are still threatening to kill him, and he has no answer to that.
Yeah, we're looking at 5 tower shots to finish off the game, so that's going to be 2 of them. Bringing Zach down to 8 energy, Frank down to 8 life.
Already enough juice left for 1 more bolt.
Yeah, here's another Glimmer of Genius. Yeah, Zach should have this one taken care of in just about 1 turn's time. He's got 7-card hand.
Fistful of counter spells.
Yeah. And a Glimmer.
And a pull from tomorrow.
He's gonna discard negate to hand size. That's a...
Yep.
That's good. And Frank really too many lands here for his deck. He just doesn't scale as well with lands as Zach's deck does.
Right.
So he'll make Gideon, Ally of Zendikar. It's a few turns late here though.
Yeah.
And Zach says, yeah, that resolves. Frank's gonna make a 2/2.
Now it's kind of a question of how much Allen wants to play with his food. You know, he just has lethal. If he wants, he can clean up this Gideon problem.
Up to 14 energy. So any not castable non-creature spell will give him lethal here. I'm sure with the number of cards in his hand, he'll be able to do that. So shoots Frank down to 2. And 4 energy. Untaps, can pick one of any of these spells to play. How about an Attune? And that's going to do it. Game 1, Zach Allen completes the sweep. So the team of Stevens, Byrd, and Allen win all the game 1s. And that one in convincing fashion for Zach Allen.
Yeah, Skarren was never really in that game.
No. Okay, so look at the sideboards here. Okay, for starters, I don't think Frank can let a Dynavolt Tower sit on the board here, if at all possible. Looking at his sideboard, he actually doesn't have many cards that interact with it.
No, he has the cast out to get off the table. Big finds are those 2 negates. You know, this can fight over the tower on the way down. You can fight counter wars. Sometimes you want to fight over Glimmer. Metallic Rebuke also seems pretty significant here. Another way to counter the tower on the way down. Can manage some tempo. Likely that you want Dispel. Tons of instants in Allen's deck.
Yeah, Zach's deck's just full of these non-creature spells. We saw Glimmers, Magma Sprays, Harnessed Lightnings. All the counter spells seem great here on Frank's side.
Yep. Presumably that 4th irrigated farmland for any kind of matchup is going to go along.
Yeah, so we'll see that from Frank. Now I'm interested on Zach's side. He actually has a transformational sideboard, which you don't see all that often in standard decks. 4 Longtusk Cub, 4 Sylvan Advocate for certain matchups where he wants to actually morph into a Teamer Energy deck, a more aggressive deck. Is this a matchup where he does that?
What these creatures would help him accomplish, if you wanted more ways to pressure Gideon, this is an option. If he brings them in, it would be for that reason. You also get under Spell Queller with these cards, so I think there's a reasonable argument for them.
Game 1 looked so good for Zach Allen. I'm hesitant to say that he should try to transform his deck. But
yeah, the reason you would transform is if you expect significant transformation from Skarren, right? If there's no more stasis snares in the deck.
When you're a 35 spell, 3 creature deck, people can sideboard against you pretty well. And Frank actually will do that. Oh, we should see what Zach, first of all, Zach goes for that plan, and then what he would cut if he did it.
One way or the other, those Chandra Flame Collars look pretty strong here.
Well, whether it's Teamer Dynavolt or Teamer Energy aggro for Zach Allen, both decks are going to use the energy counter. I know over Star Games we had that one made. It was the Jacob Baugh token we got for winning the Season 3 Invitational with his Aetherworks Marvel deck. We've been giving that away all season, and you can still get it for a limited time. It's given away to all Open and Classic participants here in Season 1. Now, we're reaching the end of Season 1. That goes through the Invitational, which happens at June 30th through July 2nd. So if you want to get those, we're still giving them away at SCG weekends from now until then, and they also ship in orders from StarCityGames.com of at least $5.
I kind of want Jacob Baugh to sign one of my energy reserves and write, "Infinite is not enough."
Okay, tell me more about this. So
we had a match on camera earlier this week where Jacob Baugh gained infinite life using Viscera Seer Kitchen Finks combo, and then proceeded to find himself in a way where you deterministically could not win that game.
Yeah, he was playing Counters Company, and the game ended up drawn, but if we're untimed, he would have lost. His banned Eldrazi opponent, Astab, got a lock of Eldrazi Displacer, Eternal Witness, Path to Exile, and eventually made enough mana where all of Baugh's creatures ended up in exile. All of them would continue to happen, and Jacob Baugh's deck was smaller. Now, killing your opponent when they're at infinite life and have a smaller deck requires, about 34 turns or so, which they didn't complete. So it did end up in a draw.
Eternal Witness to Eldrazi Displacer, Path to Exile.
That's sweet.
It's a strong combination. I have lost to that setup before.
I have never lost to that setup because you can't Path to Exile spells. But I imagine if I ever chose to play creatures, that sounds like a really scary interaction.
Yeah, that happened to me when I was playing Affinity.
Yeah, I could.
It was a bad time. I think I won the match, though.
That's actually a good matchup for Affinity. I like Affinity against Bant Eldrazi. So, the metagame gurus losing all the game ones. Going to hope to come back in some of these matches. There's special pressure, extra pressure on Jim Davis and Frank Skarren because it's unlikely that Ben Friedman will come back in that matchup. Legacy has some of the more skewed matchups of the formats, and Ben's playing one of them.
Yep. Friedman has a lot of spells that are pretty close to air in that matchup.
And as we say that, of course, Ben Friedman, he's the first player to finish game 2, and they are going to 3. Blue-black control takes a win off lands. So
anything's possible.
Speak too soon. All right, players going to trade tap lands to start the second game here. Is Irrigated Farmland for Skarren into Port Town. And now he will play Glorybound Initiate. One thing that came up last game was neither player played anything until turn 4, and that just made it very easy on Zach.
Yes. Skarren able to land this early creature. There's pressure on Alan to answer that quickly. If he's not able to, then Skarren's going to start leveraging these spell quellers, these counter spells.
For Zach Allen, the second turn is an Attune for a mountain. If he has a Magma Spray here, he'll be able to take care of the Initiate, and it looks like that's exactly what's going to happen. So, on these earlier turns, Zach so far keeping the board clean.
And it looks like Skarren does have a Gideon in hand. If he's able to commit another creature here and Alan answers that on his turn,
right,
then it's very likely that the Gideon will be able to resolve.
Here's another Glorybound Initiate and a tap land from Skarren. I think that's exactly it. Frank's deck needs to maintain a board presence. He doesn't want Zach to have a turn to tap out for that Dynavolt Tower.
Now this is bad news. Second untapped, blue source, no removal spell main phase. Not looking good for this Gideon.
Yeah, it is a Void Shatter in Zach's hand. We'll see whether or not Frank chooses to respect it, though. She's playing another Port Town. He does have damage with this Glorybound Initiate. And I'll hit for 3.
Yeah, Initiate, it hits hard enough where there's not a ton of pressure to Skarren to go for it this turn. If the hand is, for example, multiple Gideons, then it's more enticing to just jam.
All right, Negate takes care of the Gideon. Zach had a choice between Negate and Void Shatter, decides to go for the cheaper but conditional counter spell.
Yeah, likely saving the Void Shatter for a potential Archangel Avacyn down the road.
And he'll keep building his energy reserves with a copy of Aether Hub. Another hit for 3. Zach goes down to 14. So Frank has so far kept a threat on the board. He's gotten 6 damage off it. But Zach keeping him under control. It's a land 5. Does Frank commit anything else? He does not. And that was an interesting exchange there. So Zach had Glimmer of Genius that he just declined to cast. He just untapped.
So that suggests that his hand is pretty weak to Spell Queller if it comes down in that window. His life total is already under notable pressure, and if Skarren just suddenly has 5 power creatures, that's a serious problem.
Right. So instead he untaps, he attunes for a 5th land and plays it. What I do like from Alan is in order to play around that, he's giving up a lot of life points. He's taking these hits off Glorybound Initiate, but it seems controlled. You know, he's counting how many hits he can take and not really making a move before that.
Yep. Yeah, when you play against these white creature decks, discipline and how you time your removal spells and how you manage your life total is very important.
Yeah, and he's going to continue that. See, once again, declined the Glimmer. Now he plays an Aether Hub, goes up to 6 energy, and the players keep trading land drops. At 7 mana, Zach will have Glimmer plus Void Shatter. Right now he's going to go to 8, though. Just going to think about it. He did pick up a cycling land last turn. Copy of Sheltered Thicket, the red-green cycling land. Besides, yes, he'll go to 8. Frank will put a little more pressure on it, and it's Selfless Spirit. Frank, very careful not to play a creature that will let him get 2 for 1. And now Zach goes for Glimmer of Genius. Will this prompt a fight from Frank? The answer is no, he's going to get it.
Given that there hasn't been any red instant speed removal coming down so far, I assume that is what Alan is looking for here.
Yeah, Harness Lightnings and Magma Sprays seem to be it. He got a Botanical Sanctum and a Lumbering Falls after scrying 2 other lands to the bottom. That's below what he wanted there.
Yeah.
So he'll cycle a land to try to find a kill spell. And he does. He hits Harness Lightning off the last draw. And it looks like Sylvan Advocate was picked up that turn, so Zach has ported in some of his creatures. Now, Advocate's actually nice here. It's a 4/5.
Yeah, he's already at that threshold of 6 lands.
So he'll play that as what looks like a blocker. He'll keep most of Frank's damage off the table. Will that get a response from Frank? It will not.
Frank down to 2 cards in hand. Looks like one of them is a Metallic Rebuke, which would be able to handle Harness Lightning on this turn cycle.
Yeah, I mean, with as many lands as he's drawing, Frank needs to be very careful about converting his cards to resources. You know, a Mana Leak card like Metallic Rebuke doesn't always trade at this point in the game.
Right. You find yourself in situations where your opponent can pay 3 mana or just counter your Rebuke, which is technically worth a card, but you know you're losing a fight.
He hits with just Selfless Spirit. Zach Allen down to 6. And just passes the turn. Frank with 7 lands in play. Zach with 7 lands in play. 3 cards in Frank's hand. It looks like 6 or 7 in Zach's. So I'll start by swinging for 4 with the Vigilant Sylvan Advocate. So trading 4 damage for 2. He'll actually make the race close. He's still on the losing end of the race as it stands right now.
At comparable life totals, that's very strong.
Right. So plays a tap land, says go. And now we see an end step cast out from Skarren.
That should force some action. Be it a counter spell or try to use the Harness Lightning now to get something off the table.
Yeah, looks like he's going to Void Shatter the cast out.
Yeah, you can't just do nothing there. If you lose your Advocate, you're almost dead this turn. You're dead in 2 turns.
Yeah, you actually are dead to an exerted attack.
You're right, right.
So, yeah, Zach has to make a play. For Frank, it's land 8. He's down to just 2 cards and chips for 2 in the air. It's really interesting here. Zach Allen still has that Harness Lightning, but he is trying so hard to not get it spell quelled. Because right now he doesn't have a second removal spell. If his Harness Lightning gets hit by Spell Queller, he doesn't have an out. So the only thing he has is more counter spells. But he's got now 2 Void Shatters to go with Harness Lightning. And for the first time, he has 8 lands. So this is enough to cast all 3.
Yep. And Skarren's very low on cards in hand. So this should be able to be something he converts into a meaningful advantage. And also, once he gets the Selfless Spirit off the table and expends these counter spells, he can start activating Lumbering Falls and making even bigger attacks.
Yeah, I mean, once he answers these creatures, you're right, the turnaround speed for Zach Allen is very quick here. And Harness Lightning actually does not get countered. Frank will sacrifice the Selfless Spirit so that Zach doesn't get any energy off it. But that's it. At 12-4, Zach has stabilized for the time being.
Yeah. Sacrificing the Spirit's the correct play, but energy is just not the important resource.
No, and Frank just has to pass. So now with Zach having control of the board and untapping with multiple Void Shatters, things look to be going... He looks to be in the clear for the Temur Dynavolt player.
Yep, and because there was no counter war, he doesn't have to animate the Lumbering Falls. He's just significantly ahead on board and has 2 counter spells in hand.
Right, so he'll hit for 4, Frank down to 8. This is 2 more turns. Tap land and a pass, not even playing the Attune in his hand. Right now he has enough mana for 2 Void Shatters and enough to pay for Metallic Rebuke. So Frank will cast Spell Queller on the end step. Will this prompt a response from Zach? Yes, it will be a Void Shatter.
Yeah, and because the chump block makes it so Allen's clock is slower than the Spell Queller,
right,
you have to do something about that.
Now on the final lethal turn, Zach might be able to activate 2 Lumbering Falls here to just really close it out.
Yep.
If say he runs out, if he has to use his other Void Shatter this turn, he'll be out of counter spells, so he'll then just go aggressive.
Yeah, once he's out of Void Shatters. With 2 Lumbering Falls and the Advocate, that's 3 lethal attackers. A combination of 2, rather.
Gideon, ally of Zendikar, a play from Frank. He's 2 more cards in hand. Zach has 1 more Void Shatter, and he has conveniently waited until he had 6 mana here so he could pay for a Metallic Rebuke. Frank's been trying to, by doing an end step threat and a main phase threat, Frank's trying to overload Zach's mana here. But it's a lot of mana to overload. Here's another Void Shatter.
Yeah. If possible, Allen would have preferred to not have to counter this. Given that it takes so many resources to make a meaningful attack with the Gideon on the battlefield, he just kind of has to hope that the Shatter works out.
And Frank passes. 2 cards in Frank's hand, now 1 in Zach's.
And not enough mana for an Avacyn from Skarren, which is very important on this turn.
It is Harnessed Lightning that was the draw for Zach. We'll see what he wants to do here. Looks like he'll Attune. It appears like Zach's going to try to roll this up in 2 turns instead of 1. You know, I don't think we're going to see Lumbering Falls activations until the next turn.
Right. He has the option to go for Harnessed Lightning or animate 2 Lumbering Falls. Both of those lines are a little dicey in the face of, you know, Spell Queller, maybe Cast Out.
If Sylvan Advocate dies, then the Lumbering Falls are only 3/3s. So, you know, all it would really take is Frank having 1 removal spell for the Advocate, and suddenly the attack's not lethal. That's probably too much for Zach to commit into. Looks like Zach's going to go for 1 Lumbering Falls. So that's a 5/5 thanks to Sylvan Advocate's ability. And so this will be an attack for 9. This will force a block from Frank. Zach's last card, a copy of Harnessed Lightning.
And that Harnessed Lightning should be able to guarantee a lethal attack on the following turn. You know, next turn, if Skarren commits any creatures, Allen just has a Harnessed Lightning to clean up. And on the following turn, really no fear in activating the 2nd Lumbering Falls.
Frank loses the board, and that's going to be the match. So Zach Allen, 2-0. Temur Dynavolt defeats Blue-White Midrange. The team of Stevens, Byrd, and Allen gets the first match win. So we're going to go quickly back to booth and then jump over to that legacy match between Ben Friedman and Jeff Stevens. Ben Friedman's going to need to win this game to keep the team alive.
Yep. In this matchup, Friedman's trying to leverage Deathrite Shaman, Wasteland, see if it's enough.
Right, now Ben did get the first sideboarded game, and a lot of times he did have some amount of graveyard hate in his deck. I believe some surgical extractions to help fight this match, but it's still a very tough one for him.
Yep, absolutely. He also doesn't have the 20/20 creature combo.
Right. You did notice with the blue-black control deck, there's some number of Wastelands that he was able to play, so he can interact that way. Ben has 3 of them. But between Jeff Stevens and Ben Friedman, still tough, though Ben has some weapons.
Yeah, and then he has Diabolic Edicts post-board, which give him a little bit more play against the combo. His deck has some issues with Punishing Grove. That's just going to be true.
He's got to catch Punishing Fire with Surgical Extraction, but a good lands player will do their best to stop that.
Yeah, you don't usually get many opportunities to actually convert that.
Right, Tranquil Thicket and Horizon Canopy both make that difficult.
Yep.
And Jeff Stevens has both. So players are going to get ready here in just a second. We'll jump over to that match. Like we mentioned, they're already in game number 3. So for the metagame gurus, this on-air curse kind of continues. They've won. They're 2-2 today, but haven't gotten anything going on camera yet.
Yep, we'll find out if we can, though.
Let's see if Ben Friedman can turn it around. Let's go to the legacy match. So, right now, on Ben Friedman's side, we have 4 lands and a Gurmag Angler. Doing okay for Jeff Stevens, just 2 lands. He wastelands away Ben's Wasteland and discards a Force to Mox Diamond. Now, it looks like Thespian Stage has been surgically extracted by Ben Friedman. So, the 2020 is not, well, could happen this game, but it's going to have to happen by spending 30 mana on Jeff's side.
Right.
And this looks like another game that Ben could actually get post-board.
Yeah, he looks considerably ahead. Stevens going to be looking for a Maze of Ith to deal with this Gurmag Angler.
A Brainstorm from Ben Friedman. Finds some Deathrite Shaman, Force of Will. You know, if he can find Snapcaster Mage for that Surgical Extraction, that's a great find. And Jim Davis keeps up his part of the bargain between the match between Jim Davis and Nicholas Byrd, now also going to game 3. Jim Davis wins the sideboarded game.
Yeah, so they're live on 2 games here. Friedman and Davis both need to win. Friedman's doing his job.
That Brainstorm from Ben, going to resolve here. He'll put 2 back on top. He'll ponder. Another Surgical in the top 3. That's appealing.
Yeah, it looks like he brainstormed a way to maintain a counterspell in his hand. He's got a Force of Will there. That'll insulate him against something going horribly wrong with, say, a gamble.
Yeah, and Gurmag Angler will make a hit, putting Stevens down to 13. With Surgical Extraction in hand, this is a tough situation for Jeff to get out of. A lot of his engines use the graveyard here. And Gurmag Angler's not easy for lands to deal with. Maze of Ith does it very cleanly, but Punishing Fire, that's not really a thing.
You need a lot of mana to Punishing Fire that one down, and Stevens does not have access to much in the way of mana.
Does play a Horizon Canopy, and he'll sack it to draw a card. But after that, he just passes, so we are back to Friedman. Rashad and Port will take care of the Underground Sea. Slight correction here to the life totals. But Ben, Wasteland in play now, so he's even ready for a Maze of Ith from Stevens. He hits Stevens. These are correct here, so he hits Stevens down to 9 on that turn.
Yep. Still a 2-turn clock.
Stevens going to port down the Wasteland during upkeep. Doesn't want his lands to go away, but Stevens hit down to 4 by Gurmag Angler, now on a 1-turn clock. His hand does not have any lands in it. And a Thoughtseize will show what he's working with. It is Punishing Fire, Mox Diamond, and Windswept Heath.
Not much.
And Punishing Fire will get taken, and it looks like Friedman's going to surgically extract that away now. Takes the Punishing Fire and gets the one in Stevens' hand. Deathrite Shaman, Force of Will in Ben's hand. He's put those on the table face up. I don't know if he has to do them face up, but...
I think that he's trying to intimidate Stevens.
It's like, oh yeah, by the way, I'll play that Deathrite Shaman.
Maybe he just wanted to put the Shaman face up because he's casting it, and
like,
the
yeah,
Force
whatever.
Will jumped in with it.
Can't Force of Will a Maze of Ith anyway, it's fine.
Yeah. And you can't...
There's nothing left to Force of Will.
Yeah.
Mox Diamond's not going to do it. So Ben Friedman, after losing game 1, he actually finishes the comeback here, and Blue-Black Control is your winner in Legacy. So Zach Allen wins the standard match, but Ben Friedman counters in Legacy, and that will bring things back to the modern match between Jim Davis and Nicholas Byrd as they start game number 3. So the metagame gurus lose the first 4 games, but now they've won the next. They needed a 4-game comeback. They've done 3 of them.
Yep, they're most of the way there. And Dredge does get better post-sideboard against Ad Nauseam.
Yeah. So this is going to come down then to the team 2. Okay, Jim Davis and Nicholas Byrd. So let's go ahead and get to the match between these 2 players. Dredge on the left from Jim Davis, Ad Nauseam on the right from Nicholas Byrd. Byrd will be on the play for this game. Jim mulliganing to 6. Now, I've not played a lot of Ad Nauseam, not so much on Dredge. Where Ad Nauseam likes in this matchup is it's a very solid turn 4 deck. A lot of your hands turn 4. Phyrexian Unlife and Angel's Grace are very good at buying your way toward turn 4 as well.
And Jim is looking for some number of his sideboard cards in this matchup. He has 2 Thoughtseize and 2 Collective Brutalities. Those are generally going to be pretty powerful. Yeah, Ad Nauseam, because it's playing so many weirdo Magic cards, these things which just are part of the combo but not great cards outside of it, is a deck that struggles against Thoughtseize. There are a lot of, its cantrips are cards, are there Temples and Sleight of Hands. Yes, they are Visions as well. And you see Leyline of Sanctity in play for Nicholas for that reason. And that protects against the discard spells, and also Conflagrate, which can set Jim off on actually committing lethal.
So Leyline in play, and Nicholas will start on Serum Visions. So he has the Leyline, which takes away just about all of Jim's interaction. Now the question is really just what's Nicholas's Goldfish turn?
Yeah, interaction in a pretty essential part of Jim's plan. Without being able to conflagrate, he needs to generate a lot of creatures very quickly.
Right. Now, what he could also do is if Nicholas's combo relies on Phyrexian Unlife instead of Angel's Grace, then Maelstrom Pulse and Abrupt Decay is online for Jim.
Yes.
So because that, Nicholas would like to combo off with Angel's Grace Ad Nauseam as opposed to setting it up on Unlife. Nicholas Byrd, for those of you on Ad Nauseam today, is playing the build with Peer Through Depths, 4 Leyline of Sanctities in the main, so that means no Spoils of the Vault. He also has a Relic of Progenitus main, which figures great here, playing a Whir of Invention and Mystical Teachings.
Yeah, Whir of Invention is a pretty good way to convert extra mana with your Lotus Blooms.
So the things to cover that, yeah, like I mentioned, no Spoils of the Vault, no Lab Maniac either. It's just the Lightning Storm is the kill. Which a lot of times when you see the Peer versions, they only have the 1-win condition. A Spoils of the Vault version actually, for a lot of the reasons of that card, has to play a second win con. It's too risky not to.
Yeah, and these Leyline of Sanctities are actually main deck for Byrd. We've seen him do this before. Not the Open that he won, but...
yeah. It was a turn 1 Neonate from Jim Davis. So for Nicholas, draws a card that he scryed to the top with Serum Visions, and that card was Lotus Bloom. So this sets up what's likely a turn 5 kill for Byrd. For Jim, he activates Insolent Neonate, dredging a life from the Loam. Dredges into Bloodghast. And he's just going to draw a card naturally for the turn.
And no other options.
Here's Neonate, he'll discard and draw off Neonate, discard life from the Loam, dredge it. Prized Amalgam and Golgari Thug, dredged here. Jim's gonna ask, does he have a land? He does, it's Blood Crypt. Play it, get Bloodghast and Prized Amalgam out of the graveyard. You see Jim knowing this matchup, saying, okay, he knows how important his Goldfish speed here. He's playing these cards in a very aggressive way. And here's Faithless Looting. He's trying to get as much power on the board as fast as possible. And the first dredge off Golgari Thug is a huge one. It's Narcomoeba, Amalgam. And you're wondering whether Jim could be the faster deck. With this draw, the answer is absolutely.
Yeah, now there's some pressure on Byrd to be able to produce some Angel's Graces that supplement his combo, and maybe like a Darkness to get him there.
Yeah, this is where Phyrexian Unlife is an amazing card for Nicholas Byrd, because Angel's Grace can fog for you or help you win on the combo turn, but actually can't do both. Unlife, if Nicholas plays it, he can it can do both in one card. I mean, Jim made 12 power of creatures that turn. Byrd plays a temple and passes. Back to Jim's turn. He needs to win in 2 attacks here. Here's Golgari Thug, milling another Narcomoeba. Narcomoeba into play, Thug into hand. And Jim is not done. He's going to swing for 12. Byrd's down to 5. So yeah, then he will play Life from the Loam, getting back land. So what Nicholas would love here is if he just has Phyrexian Unlife.
Yes.
That should, and Ad Nauseam in his hand. That should do it. Without really any other cards.
Yeah, he has enough mana to just cast the Unlife on the following turn.
Right.
And the Lotus Bloom will come off the turn after that. And plenty of mana for Ad Nauseam.
But if he doesn't have one of those 2 cards, this is a tough spot for Byrd.
Yes. Might get in the spot where he needs to cobble together some string of using Angel's Grace to survive.
Yeah, if he has Angel's Grace Ad Nauseam, he'll have to use the Angel's Grace this turn and then find another one. Bloodghast into play, Insolent Neonate also cast for Jim. So Bloom down to 1. Nicholas will have all his mana coming in a turn.
And there is an Ad Nauseam in hand for Byrd.
All right, so what white cards do you have to go with it? He drew Phyrexian Unlife. Yes, Jim was like, that one right there.
Play the good one.
That was what we needed. You drew it, play it. Everybody agrees. Here's the play, Phyrexian Unlife.
All right, Jim needs to find Abrupt Decay or Maelstrom Pulse here.
So this card, basically what happens, this next attack from Jim's will send Nicholas into the negatives, and then all the rest of the damage will be dealt with Infect. So Jim will be at Nicholas will be at, negative something. Then he'll cast Ad Nauseam and draw his deck. On Jim's side, if there wasn't a Leyline in play, what Jim could have as an out is Conflagrate Nicholas for 5. That would then turn it into Infect mode, swing for 10 poison. But the Leyline takes that out away as well. So Jim just has to draw Maelstrom Pulse or Abrupt Decay. He's going to dredge Golgari Thug. That doesn't do much, though.
It's possible Jim did just look at his sideboard. Are these cards in his deck?
If they're not in his deck, then he has no outs. He'll put Nicholas down to a negative number here. So it looks like it's a swing for some more than 5.
I believe it's 15.
Okay. That looks about right, yeah. Swing for 15. Nicholas goes to negative 10. Future damage he takes will be dealt as though it had Infect. But the thing about Ad Nauseam is in this situation, it's not a probabilistic. Nicholas just has him.
Yep.
With Spoils of the Vault, there's some uncertainty as to whether or not they're going to combo you, but no, Nicholas has it. Yeah. And Jim doesn't look like he has a reply.
Yeah, you cast Ad Nauseam, you draw your entire deck because you're smart and want to win the game. There are cards in your deck that do that.
Well, Jim will dredge through the rest of his deck here. Here's 5 more in the yard, including a Narcomoeba. Yeah, and we've gone through almost Jim's whole deck. There don't appear to be the black-green cards out of the board.
Yeah, it looks like the sideboarding is entirely discard spells.
Which, to be fair, are the best tools against Ad Nauseam.
Yes.
Now, it kind of stinks that Nicholas had the Leyline, but Ad Nauseam in post-board games frequently does that. He's got the Ad Nauseam in hand, and if you actually look at Byrd's hand, it looks like he also had the Angel's Grace. So he draws for turn. Lotus Bloom will make 3 mana. Here's 5. Here's Ad Nauseam. Nicholas is at negative 10. He's going to draw all the cards in his deck. Go to negative. I've done this on Moto. It's usually like negative 60 is where you end up when you add up all the costs in your deck. You learn that because you have to click through it. See, Moto keeps track. Here's 3 Simian Spirit Guides. Here's Lightning Storm. Nicholas should pitch exactly 7 lands to it, which he will do. Jim's going to redirect. Oh, okay. Well, Nicholas will redirect back. It's like, no way, man. Oh, Jim can't redirect.
The Leyline prevents Byrd from being targetable.
I guess
he can redirect
to his own creature. I mean, Nicholas has more lands. That never works.
Yeah.
The only time that works is if you get a very new Ad Nauseam pilot. Sometimes when they cast Lightning Storm, they say, pitch all my lands to it.